So, what happens when a high ranking minister gets caught in a storm of accusations about their finances? Their response can pretty much define their entire career. Today, we're diving into the statement of Sudung Gurung, who found himself right in the middle of that storm and made a pretty dramatic choice between power and principles. Let's break down his side of the story.
Right off the bat, he drops this line, and it really sets the stage for everything he's about to say. This isn't just him defending himself. He's framing this whole thing as a declaration of his core values. He's asking everyone to see his actions through this specific lens.
Okay, so what exactly was he being accused of? Well, in his statement, he methodically takes them on one by one, and that's exactly how we're going to walk through it to understand his perspective.
First on the list, this charge that he hid a 25 lakh investment. The minister says, hold on, this is just a big misunderstanding. He argues that he already publicly declared over 2 crore in assets for everyone to see. This smaller amount was just included within that big total. So his point is this isn't a cover-up, it's just a matter of how it was classified on paper.
And this really gets to the heart of his logic. He's basically posing a question, right? Why would a person who's trying to be sneaky publicly declare a huge, verifiable portfolio of over 2 crore only to try and hide a tiny fraction of it? He's suggesting the whole accusation just doesn't add up. And he built on that with 2 more really crucial points. First, the timing. This whole investment happened before he even became a minister. And second, the how. Every single transaction went through the banking system, which, leaves a very clear paper trail. His argument is that you don't use official, traceable bank transfers if you're trying to hide something.
All right, the next big accusation is about his connections. This idea that he was in a partnership with a controversial figure. His response draws a sharp line between being a partner and simply being a shareholder. He points out that huge companies have thousands of investors, including big banks and even media outlets. So if just buying shares makes you a partner, he argues, then all of them are in the same boat.
And that leads him to ask this central question about the whole thing. Is the act of investing in a company a crime in itself? Or is he being singled out while tons of other investors in the exact same company are just being ignored? It's a pretty direct challenge to the fairness of the whole situation. Now, what about a conflict of interest? That's a really serious charge, especially for a home minister. But here he clarifies a key detail about how the government works. The investigation is being handled by a department that's under the Ministry of Finance, not his home ministry. That separation, he claims, makes it impossible for him to directly interfere. He basically argues that the best proof that he hasn't interfered is the fact that the investigation is still going on. His logic is pretty simple. If he had actually used his power to shut it down, well, it would have been shut down already. Of course, anytime there's a big investment, the number one question is always, where did the money come from? So in the next part of his statement, the minister lays out the entire money trail.
He breaks it down into a clear 3-step process. First, a formal loan agreement was signed on a specific date. Second, that loan money was officially transferred into his bank account. And third, those exact funds were then used to make the share investment. It's a clean, documented trail from A to B to C.
So the minister's message here is firm. This isn't about rumors or speculation. He's saying his financial story is backed up by legal documents and official bank records, things that can actually be verified. And he's contrasting that hard evidence with all the talk swirling around. So after addressing every single accusation, the story takes a really sharp turn. This is the moment where defending himself shifts into taking decisive action. And there it is, simple, direct, and powerful. He announces he's stepping down from one of the most powerful jobs in the government, effective immediately. Which, of course, brings us to the biggest question of all. If you just spent all this time laying out your defense and claiming you're innocent with evidence to back it up, why on earth would you resign? Well, he outlines 4 main reasons. He says he's doing it to make sure the investigation can be totally fair and impartial. He's removing even the perception of a conflict of interest. He also gives a nod to the public's demand for accountability, even mentioning the Gen Z movement. But ultimately, he says it all comes back to that very first point, putting ethics before his position. And he connects this very personal decision to a much bigger idea. In his eyes, this resignation isn't an admission of guilt. Instead, he's framing it as an act of responsibility, something he believes is absolutely necessary to maintain the public's trust in its leaders. But his statement doesn't just end with the resignation. He wraps things up by looking toward the future and by throwing down a challenge to everyone else.
He kind of turns the tables here and issues a call to action. He appeals to journalists, to the youth, to the public, and basically says that if the country truly wants change, then it's not enough to just demand it from politicians. Everyone has to commit to those same high standards of truth and integrity.
And with this final, powerful statement, he frames his own resignation as that very sacrifice he's talking about. He's suggesting that building a better country requires more than just pointing fingers. It requires a willingness from everyone to make difficult, ethical choices.
And in the end, this whole situation leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. What does true accountability really look like? Is it about forcing someone out of office as a punishment? Or could it be about someone voluntarily stepping aside to uphold a principle, even while they insist they've done nothing wrong? It really makes you think about what we expect from our leaders.